am a 25-year-old woman born and raised in a seemingly loving but controlling family in suburban Boston. My father, James, and his best friend, Richard Thompson, have been inseparable since college, building businesses and planning our lives together. That included me marrying Richard's son, Jason. The only problem was, I had already fallen deeply in love with Daniel, my college sweetheart. What no one knew was that I would soon face an impossible choice between family loyalty and true love. Before I continue this story about standing up for true love, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to make a difficult choice for your own happiness. Growing up in suburban Boston, my life seemed picture perfect from the outside. Our two-story colonial, with the white picket fence on Maple Avenue, was the backdrop for what everyone thought was the perfect American family. But inside, those walls' expectations were set in stone, and dreams were only acceptable if they aligned with my parents' plans. My father, James Anderson, built his construction company from scratch after college. His best friend, Richard Thompson, was with him every step of the way, as they created Anderson Thompson Builders, one of the most successful construction firms in Massachusetts. Their 30-year friendship was more like brotherhood, their families entwined through barbecues, vacations, and holiday celebrations that felt more like obligations than joys. My mother, Catherine, gave up her dreams of becoming an architect to support my father. She buried her ambitions so deeply that I only discovered them by accident when I found her old sketches in the attic when I was 16. When I asked her about them, she quickly dismissed them as childish fantasies. My younger brother, Thomas, was the golden child. 3 years younger than me, he embraced every expectation with enthusiasm. He played the sports my father wanted, studied business like my father wanted, and never questioned the path laid out for him. I loved my brother, but his perfect compliance made my questioning nature stand out even more starkly. I was always the difficult one. When Thomas would eagerly join my father and Richard on fishing trips, I would ask why we always had to go to the same lake every summer. When family dinners included discussions about the business, Thomas would listen attentively, while I would ask about politics or art, or anything outside our family bubble. My father would give me that look, the one that said I was being troublesome again. Despite the tension, I excelled academically. My acceptance to Boston University was a victory I had to fight for. My father wanted me to attend the local community college, insisting that a business degree was all I needed to handle the administrative side of the family business, where he assumed I would work after graduation. Those arguments were some of the worst. I can still remember his voice booming through the house. "What do you need some fancy university for? You will end up working for the company and marrying a nice local boy anyway." His words stung, but I stood my ground. It was one of the few battles I won, though the victory came with cold shoulders and passive-aggressive comments about wasting money. Boston University was where my life truly began. The campus hummed with diverse voices and perspectives that had been missing in my sheltered upbringing. In my sophomore year, I took an economics class that changed everything, not because of the subject, but because of who sat next to me. Daniel Mitchell had warm brown eyes that crinkled when he laughed, and a quick mind that challenged even our professor. He was the first generation in his family to attend college, his parents having immigrated from Ireland before he was born. That first day, he borrowed a pencil from me. By midterms, we were getting coffee after class. By finals, I was falling for him. Our relationship grew over late-night study sessions and early morning walks through the Boston Common. Daniel never saw limitations, only possibilities. He talked about traveling the world, starting a business together, building something that was entirely ours. With him, I began to imagine a future so different from the one my family had planned. The first time I brought Daniel home for dinner was a disaster. My father barely acknowledged him. My mother was uncomfortably polite, and Thomas just stared at his plate. When Daniel mentioned his plans to start his own financial consulting business rather than joining an established firm, my father scoffed. "Good luck with that pipe dream, kid," he had said. The drive back to campus was silent, with Daniel squeezing my hand reassuringly at every stoplight. After that, I started hiding our relationship. I would tell my parents I was studying with friends when I was really with Daniel. Our love grew in the spaces between family obligations in the coffee shops and bookstores of Boston, in his small apartment with the crooked bookshelves he had built himself. Meanwhile, at every family gathering, Richard would bring Jason along, and my parents would make comments about what a nice young man he was. Jason had joined his father at Thompson Construction, straight out of his business program at State University. He drove a sleek car, wore expensive watches, and always had a way of talking that suggested he was doing you a favor by conversing with you. As graduation approached, I landed a job at Horizon Marketing, a small but growing firm in downtown Boston. Daniel and I found an apartment together, a tiny one-bedroom walk-up with uneven floors and a window that looked out over a brick wall. My parents never visited. I told them I had roommates, and they never asked questions. It was easier that way. We were building a life together, Daniel and I. He worked as a financial analyst while developing plans for his own firm. I was climbing the ranks at Horizon, managing social media campaigns for local businesses. We talked about marriage someday, but we were in no rush. We were happy. I should have known it was too good to last. The storm that had been brewing since my childhood was about to break. It was a Sunday in April, when my carefully constructed double life collapsed. My parents had insisted I come to dinner saying they had big news. I assumed it was about Thomas, or the business, never imagining it would be about me. The dining room was set with the good china, which should have been my first warning sign. Richard and Jason Thompson were already seated when I arrived. Richard embraced me with his usual bone-crushing hug, while Jason stood with a strange smile that made me uneasy. My father waited until after the main course, standing to tap his wine glass with a spoon. I still remember the sound, crystal clear and piercing. "Angela, Richard and I have some great news," he announced, beaming at me. "We have been discussing the future of our companies, and we have decided to merge Anderson Thompson into one family business. And to cement this merger, we think it is time for you and Jason to get engaged." The table erupted in congratulations while I sat frozen. Jason pulled out a small box from his pocket. My father and Richard shook hands across the table. My mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Thomas clapped Jason on the shoulder. I could not speak. I could not move. It was as if I had stepped into someone else's life. When I finally found my voice, all I could manage was, "I need some air," before rushing out to the backyard. My mother followed me out. "Honey, I know this is sudden, but your father and Richard have been planning this for years. It makes perfect sense for the business. But what about what I want?" I countered, feeling tears threatening. She sighed, placing a hand on my arm. "Sometimes we make sacrifices for family, Angela. This will secure your future. And Jason is a nice young man from a good family." I drove home in a daze that night and collapsed into Daniel's arms, sobbing, as I explained what had happened. He held me, stroking my hair, assuring me that we would figure it out together. "I will go with you to talk to your father tomorrow," he offered. "No," I said, knowing my father too well. "I need to handle this myself." The next day, Jason showed up at my office with a diamond ring that could have paid our rent for 6 months. He slipped it on my finger before I could protest, then announced our engagement to my entire office. My colleagues gathered around congratulating us while I stood there with a plastic smile, feeling the weight of that ring like a shackle. Jason suggested dinner that night to discuss wedding plans. At the upscale restaurant he chose, he ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. "I am thinking a June wedding," he said, between bites of his steak. "That gives us about 2 months to plan. My mother has already contacted a few venues." 2 months? That is so soon," I protested. He reached across the table to pat my hand condescendingly. "No point in waiting. Besides, the sooner we get married, the sooner you can quit that little marketing job. You will be too busy overseeing the household and attending business functions with me." "Quit my job?" I echoed, not believing what I was hearing. "Of course, no wife of mine needs to work." "It does not look good for a Thompson man to have a working wife. People will think I cannot provide." That was when I knew with absolute certainty that I could never marry Jason Thompson. His vision for our future left no room for my dreams, my career, or my identity. The confrontation with my father came the next evening. I drove to my parents' house, rehearsing what I would say. I would be calm and rational. I would explain that while I respected his friendship with Richard, I could not marry someone I did not love. Reality was far messier. The moment I told him I would not marry Jason, my father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "This is not a request, Angela," he thundered. "This is what is happening. The merger agreement has already been drafted with the marriage as a condition. Do you have any idea how important this is for our family?" "I have my own life, Dad," I countered. "My own career. My own relationship. I have been with Daniel for nearly 3 years. That bookish nobody," he scoffed. "What can he offer you? Jason will give you stability status, a place in the family business." "I do not want a place in the family business. I never have." That is when he delivered his ultimatum. "Either you marry Jason, or you are no longer a part of this family. No support, no inheritance, no contact. Your choice." I looked to my mother, hoping for some support, but she stared at her hands, folded in her lap. Thomas, who had entered the room during our argument, stood firmly behind my father. "You are being selfish," Angela, Thomas said. "This is bigger than just you. This affects all of us." I left in tears, my father's words following me out the door. "Think carefully about what you are throwing away. Family is forever. That boy will not last." Daniel was waiting up when I got home, and I collapsed into his arms. He held me while I cried, then helped me strategize how to handle the situation. We agreed I needed time to try to reason with my family to make them understand, but the pressure only increased. Wedding preparations began without my input. My mother called daily with questions about colors and flowers that I refused to answer. Richard sent texts about how excited he was to officially become family. Then I discovered the prenuptial agreement that Jason had prepared. Daniel, who worked in finance, reviewed it and was horrified. "This gives Jason control over any inheritance you receive," he explained. "And it gives him final say in all financial decisions, including your career." I made one final attempt to reason with my parents. This time, my father did not even let me finish speaking. "The wedding is happening, Angela. You can come willingly, or we will make it clear to everyone that you had a mental breakdown and needed family intervention. Do not test me on this." That night I realized I was trapped in a life that was closing in around me. As the weeks passed and the wedding date approached, my anxiety spiraled out of control. I began having panic attacks, waking in the middle of the night, gasping for air. Daniel would hold me, whispering reassurances, but we both knew the situation was becoming unbearable. Jason became increasingly controlling. He would show up at my office, unannounced, to take me to lunch, making a show of introducing himself to my colleagues as my fiancé. He questioned my work schedule, suggesting I needed to cut back my hours to prepare for the wedding. He criticized my clothes, my friends, even the way I organized my desk. One evening, when I was working late, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "You should be home by now." A chill ran through me. How did he know I was still at the office? When I got to my car, I found a small black device attached underneath, a tracking device. Jason had been monitoring my movements. The next day I found him waiting at my apartment when I returned from work. Daniel was due home any minute, and I panicked. "Why are you here?" I demanded. "Checking on my investment," he replied with that smug smile. "Your mother gave me a key. We need to discuss moving your things to my condo before the wedding." "I need to get some work done, Jason," I said, trying to usher him out. "We can talk about this tomorrow." But he was in no hurry to leave. He wandered around our apartment, picking up photos, examining bookshelves. When he opened the bedroom door and saw the obviously shared space, his expression darkened. "Whose things are these?" he demanded, pointing to Daniel's clothes. "My roommate's," I lied weakly. That was when Daniel walked in. The three of us froze in a terrible tableau. "Who is this?" Jason demanded, though I could tell from his expression that he already knew. Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand with a calm I did not feel. "Daniel Mitchell, you must be Jason." Jason ignored the outstretched hand. So, this is why you have been stalling on the wedding plans. You have been playing house with this, nobody. I think you should leave, Daniel said, his voice level but firm. Jason stepped closer to him. Do you have any idea who my family is? What we can do? You are nothing. And if you think you are going to ruin this merger by turning Angela against her family, you are sadly mistaken. He turned to me, his face twisted with anger. This ends now, Angela. Pack a bag. You are coming with me. I am not going anywhere with you, I said, finding courage in Daniel's presence. Jason grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. Your father warned me you might be difficult. Said you have always been the problem child. I told him I could handle you, and I will. Daniel stepped between us. Take your hands off her. Now. Jason released me with a shove. This is not over, he spat. I will be talking to your father about this little situation. Enjoy playing house while you can. There are ways of handling homewreckers like him. After he stormed out, I collapsed onto our sofa, shaking uncontrollably. Daniel sat beside me, examining the red marks on my arm. We need to get you out of this situation, he said firmly. This is beyond family pressure. This is dangerous. I knew he was right, but I felt paralyzed by the impossible choice before me. 2 nights later, I overheard a conversation that made the decision for me. I had reluctantly agreed to attend a family dinner, hoping to smooth things over while I figured out a plan. I arrived early and heard my father and Richard talking in the study, the door slightly ajar. She has always been headstrong, my father was saying. Too independent for her own good. But marriage to Jason will fix that rebellious streak. Richard laughed. Jason knows how to take charge. He will have her in line within a month. And then we can move forward with the merger and expansion plans. My blood ran cold as I listened to these men planning my life, as if I were nothing more than a business asset to be managed. I slipped out of the house before they knew I was there and drove straight home to Daniel. He took one look at my face and knew something had changed. I recounted what I had heard, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. They are never going to respect my choice, I said. And Jason, he scares me, Daniel. The way he looked at you, the tracking device, the threats. Daniel took my hands in his and knelt before me. Angela Anderson, I have loved you since that first day in economics class. I want to build a life with you far away from here if that is what it takes. Will you marry me? Not for a merger, not for family approval, but because we love each other. Through my tears I nodded. Yes. Yes, I will. That night we made our plan. We would leave Boston, immediately drive to Vermont, where we could get a marriage license without waiting, and start fresh somewhere they could not find us easily. I would request a transfer to my company's Chicago office. Daniel had a college friend there who could help him find work. I made one last attempt to reach out to my mother, meeting her for coffee the next morning. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would understand. Mom, I cannot marry Jason, I told her. I do not love him. He is controlling and sometimes frightening. She looked at me with sad eyes. Marriage is not about love, Angela. It is about security and family. Your father and I did not marry for love. That shocked me. But you have been together for 30 years, she smiled thinly. And we built a good life. Love came later in its own way. She reached for my hand. Give Jason a chance. For me. For the family. I realized then that she was as trapped as I was about to become. I hugged her goodbye, knowing it might be the last time. That night, while my family thought I was working late, Daniel and I loaded our car with everything we could fit. We left most of our furniture, our books, so many memories, but we had each other. The drive to Vermont was tense. Every time headlights appeared behind us, I feared it was Jason or my father following us. We checked into a small bed and breakfast under Daniel's name, and the next morning applied for our marriage license. The waiting period felt eternal, though it was only a few days. During that time, my phone exploded with messages. My father threatened legal action. My mother pleaded for me to come home. Thomas called me a selfish traitor. Jason's messages were the worst veiled threats about what would happen when he found me. We found a small chapel with a kind minister who agreed to perform the ceremony. 2 elderly tourists served as our witnesses, beaming as if we were their own grandchildren. I wore a simple white dress we found in a local boutique. Daniel wore the only suit he had brought. It was not the wedding I had dreamed of as a girl, but as we spoke our vows, I felt a certainty I had never known. This was right. This was true. This was love. My cousin Maria, the only family member who knew where I was, had promised to keep our secret. But that night she called in tears. "I am so sorry, Angela. Your father threatened to fire my dad from the company. I had to tell them you were in Vermont." Then my phone buzzed with a notification. Maria had posted about the family scandal on her social media, tagging me and Jason. The comments were flooding in, most of them cruel, calling me ungrateful, selfish, a runaway bride. I broke down that night in our small bed and breakfast room. Daniel held me as I sobbed for the family I was losing, for the life we were leaving behind, for the cruelty of people who claimed to love me but wanted to control me. When I could cry no more, I made a decision. I took our one wedding photo, a simple shot the minister's wife had taken of us smiling outside the chapel. I sent it to my family group chat with a simple message: "I married for love. I hope someday you can understand and respect that. Until then, I need space to build my life with my husband." Then I turned off my phone and we drove toward Chicago and our new beginning. The Chicago skyline appeared on the horizon like a promise of new possibilities. Daniel squeezed my hand as we crossed into the city limits, our car stuffed with the few belongings we had brought from Boston. We had been driving for 2 days, stopping only for food and a few hours of restless sleep at roadside motels. Our first apartment was a studio on the north side, barely big enough for our air mattress, and the 2 suitcases of clothes we had managed to bring. But it was ours, free from family expectations and pressure. The first night we ate takeout pizza on the floor and toasted our new life with cheap wine in paper cups. Those early weeks were a strange mixture of exhilaration and grief. I had secured a transfer to my company's Chicago office, taking a slight demotion in the process. Daniel found work at a financial services firm through his college friend. We were starting over professionally, but we were together. The grief would hit me in unexpected moments, passing a mother and daughter shopping together, hearing a Boston accent on the street, seeing father-daughter dance videos online. Each time it felt like reopening a wound that had barely begun to heal. I struggled with guilt too. Had I been selfish? Should I have tried harder to make my family understand? The rational part of me knew I had made the right choice, but emotions are rarely rational. Daniel suggested I find a therapist, and it was some of the best advice I ever received. Dr. Winters helped me understand the emotional manipulation I had experienced, how my father's controlling behavior had shaped my sense of self-worth and obligation. She helped me see that choosing my own path was not selfish. It was necessary for my well-being. Through therapy, I also came to understand my mother better. She had faced a similar choice in her youth, according to the fragments she had shared over the years. There had been another man before my father, someone her family disapproved of. Unlike me, she had chosen family approval over love. I wondered if her passive support of my father's plans had been driven by a determination to believe she had made the right choice herself. Slowly, we built a life in Chicago. We made friends through work, joined a recreational soccer league, explored our new city together. Daniel's parents, though initially shocked by our elopement, welcomed me into their family with open arms. His mother called weekly just to check in, and his father sent corny dad jokes via text. It was a different kind of family relationship than I had known, warm and supportive without conditions. About 3 months after our move, I received an unexpected message from my brother Thomas. It was brief, almost formal. "I do not agree with how you handled things, but I miss you. Dad and Jason are still furious. Mom cries a lot. Maria feels terrible about what happened. I am not taking sides, but I wanted you to know I do not hate you." It was not much, but it was the first crack in the wall of silence from my family. I responded with equal caution, thanking him for reaching out and telling him I missed him too. We began a tentative correspondence, never discussing my father or Jason, just sharing small details about our lives. Through Thomas, I learned that my mother had once been engaged to a man her parents disapproved of. She had broken it off to marry my father, a man her parents had selected. This confirmation of what I had suspected hit me hard. Had she been trying to spare me from regret or force me into the same compromise she had made? 6 months into our new life, Daniel and I had saved enough to move to a 1-bedroom apartment and replace our air mattress with a real bed. We celebrated by hosting a small housewarming party, inviting our new friends and colleagues. It was during this gathering that Daniel proposed an idea that would change our trajectory again. "What if we started our own business?" he suggested one night, as we were cleaning up after our guests had left. "You have the marketing expertise. I have the financial background. We could start small consulting for local businesses and grow from there." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Starting a business had always been our dream, but we had imagined it years in the future after we had established ourselves and saved more money. But why wait? We had already taken the biggest risk by leaving everything behind. What was one more leap of faith? Mitchell Anderson Consulting launched from our tiny living room. Our first clients were small businesses in our neighborhood, a coffee shop looking to increase foot traffic, a bookstore wanting to build an online presence. We worked evenings and weekends while keeping our day jobs, pouring every spare dollar back into the business. As Thanksgiving approached, I felt the absence of family traditions acutely. Daniel suggested we create our own instead. We hosted an orphan Thanksgiving for other transplants to Chicago without family nearby. I made my mother's sweet potato casserole, the one recipe I had memorized from childhood. The apartment was crowded with new friends, the conversation flowing as freely as the wine. It was different, but it was joyful. Shortly after the new year, I was shopping downtown when I heard a familiar voice call my name. I turned to see Jason Thompson standing on the sidewalk as immaculately dressed as ever. My heart raced with panic, and I instinctively looked around for Daniel. "I thought it was you," Jason said, stepping closer. "You disappeared so completely. Your father has been beside himself." I doubt that I replied, finding my voice. "What are you doing in Chicago business trip?" "We are expanding here, actually. The merger went ahead anyway." He looked me up and down, his gaze critical. "You look different." "I am different," I said. "Happier. Free." He laughed, that condescending sound I had come to dread. "Still playing house with that nobody. It will not last, you know. When it falls apart, your options will be much more limited than they were before." In that moment, I saw clearly what my life would have been with Jason. The constant criticism, the slow erosion of my confidence, the gradual surrender of my independence. I stood taller. "My husband and I are doing very well, thank you. We have our own business now. And if you will excuse me, I have a meeting to get to." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift that I had not even realized I was still carrying. Jason had not changed, but I had. His words could no longer touch me. That spring, Mitchell Anderson Consulting landed our first major client, a regional chain of organic markets, looking to revamp their brand identity. We hired our first employee, a graphic designer named Sophia, who brought fresh energy and ideas to our team. By our first anniversary, we had outgrown our living room office and leased a small commercial space. On our wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised me with a weekend getaway to a lakeside cabin in Michigan. Under a canopy of stars, we talked about how far we had come in just 1 year. "I never doubted we could do it," he said, his arm around me as we sat on the dock. "But I never imagined we would be this happy this quickly." "Neither did I admitted. "I still miss my family sometimes, but I do not regret our choice. Not for a second." 2 weeks later, I received an email from my father. The first direct communication since I had left. It was brief and businesslike. He had heard through industry channels about our business. He was planning to be in Chicago the following month. Would I meet him for lunch? I showed the email to Daniel, my hands shaking. "What should I do?" "Whatever feels right to you," he said. "I will support you either way." I agreed to the meeting, choosing a public restaurant where I felt safe. When the day came, I arrived early, rehearsing what I would say. My father arrived exactly on time, looking older than I remembered. The conversation was stiff at first, polite inquiries about the weather, the city, my health. Then he cleared his throat and got to the point. "Your mother misses you terribly," he said. "Thomas, too. The house is too quiet without you." I waited for more, for some acknowledgement of his role in driving me away. It did not come. "You could come visit," he continued, "for your mother's sake. We could put the past behind us." I took a deep breath. "The past is not behind us, Dad. Not until you acknowledge that what you did was wrong. You tried to force me into a marriage I did not want for your business interests. You threatened to disown me when I refused. You chose your company over my happiness." His face hardened. "I was trying to secure your future, to give you stability, by taking away my choice, by ignoring who I was and what I wanted." I shook my head. "I have built my own stability now. Daniel and I have a successful business, a home, a life we love." "So you will not come home," he said, making it sound like an accusation. "Not under these conditions," I replied. "I would love to repair our relationship, but I cannot pretend what happened was okay. I cannot go back to being the daughter who does what she is told, regardless of her own wants and needs." We parted without resolution, but for the first time I did not feel devastated by his disapproval. I had found a strength in myself that did not depend on his validation. On our second Thanksgiving in Chicago, our business had grown to 7 employees. We hosted the holiday at our new, larger apartment once again, filling it with friends who had become like family. As I looked around at the faces of people who loved us for who we were, not for what they wanted us to be, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had chosen love over obligation, authenticity over approval, freedom over security. It had cost me my family of origin, at least for now. But it had given me the space to build a life based on love and mutual respect. Perhaps someday my parents would understand and accept my choices. Perhaps my mother would find the courage to support me openly. Perhaps my father would recognize that true family supports your happiness rather than controls it. Until then, I would continue building a life that honored my own values and dreams. I have learned that family is not just about blood or obligation. It is about who sees you for who you are and loves you anyway. It is about who celebrates your victories and supports you through your struggles. It is about who gives you the freedom to be yourself. I would love to hear your stories of standing up for your authentic self in the comments below. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your own happiness? What helped you find the courage to choose your own path? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that choosing their own happiness is not selfish. It is necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that true love should always lift you up, never hold you down.